Delicately bringeth up his servant from a child shall have him become his son at the length. An angry man stirreth up strife, and a furious man aboundeth in transgression. A man's pride shall bring him low, but honor shall uphold the humble in spirit. As I was reading and looking at these verses, I found it astonishing that what I thought a verse was saying was totally contrary to what it actually was saying. I think it's important that we not only learn to read the Word of God, but we learn to study the Word of God. And I think the first verse that I talk about will convey that point. The Bible in 2 Timothy 2:15 says, "Study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not be ashamed." We need to learn to study the Word of God. I think it's important to rightly divide the word of truth. And Christina Thompson, I think everybody knows who she is. She called me a few weeks ago and said, "Brother Jeff, can I come over your house and ask you about the 1970s? I'm thinking, okay, she's doing this because she thinks I'm old, but I am. And so I understand the 1970s. And we talked for maybe 45 minutes about the styles, the words people used, and she was blown away by this one fact. I said, well, back when I was a teenager during that time, if somebody said something was bad, that means it was good. She said, what? Saying something is bad means it's good? Yeah, if you like that, man, that was bad. And I'm saying that to say things don't always mean what we think it means. Well, it was the Princess Bride. I don't think that word means what you think it means. Yeah, isn't that the right movie? That's sort of the case with this first verse. I don't think it means what you think it means. Let's look at Proverbs chapter 29, verse 21. He that delicately bringeth up his servant from a child shall have him become his son at the length. Let me stop here and ask you, what does that mean? On a first reading, what do you think that means? Don't be afraid.
That you'll bond with that servant.
Yeah, that is obviously in your first reading what that looks like that means. That you'll bond with him and he'll become someone special to you and he'll be a part of the family. That's not what it means. Blew my mind as I was studying. That is not what this means. This verse seems to convey one point. It's almost like the 70 term, that's bad. Do you know what in the 70s, John, do you remember? You don't remember. You weren't even born then. But you have heard of that. You've seen it on TV or something where somebody says, that's bad. Meaning that's good. And this verse is a lot like that. I'm sorry? It's groovy, man. Yeah, it's groovy. Yes. but a study, and that's why I told you 2 Timothy 2:15, a study of this verse tells you what God is really trying to convey. Do you know a stubborn servant is a problem to its master? Do you know that a stubborn employee, Kim, is a problem to you? It's a problem to you. I manage a lot of folks, and the stubborn ones, I know every one of their names. I have 100 or so employees. I can't say that I know everybody's name immediately. Those stubborn ones, I know who they are right away. I'm sorry? Yeah, it's the same. It's the same. But people that study the specific words in the Bible, which is not me, but I guess there's a field of study where people look at the words, look at the old meanings of words. Those people will tell you. Look at verse 21 again. That word son, S-O-N, they are not absolutely sure of what the meaning of that word is. This is the Hebrew word that is used for that term son. This is the only time in the Bible that it's used. No other place in the Bible is that word used at all. period. And so we don't have other places in the Bible that we can go to compare, saying, okay, what does that Hebrew word actually mean? It's a difficult thing to understand, and I think I'll make this clear in just a minute. The Proverbs says this: he that delicately bringeth up his servant from a child shall have him become M-A-N-O-N, Menon. He will have him become Menon in time or in length. There are a couple different interpretations for that word, and hang with me because this really helps us see what God is trying to convey. There are a couple of different interpretations for this word. A Strong's Concordance defines Menon as a son or an heir. That's Strong's Concordance. The Enhanced Strong's Lexicon defines it as this: grief, thanklessness, but also notes that one time in the King James Bible, this is translated as a son. The Dictionary of Biblical Languages, where people spend all their time looking at the meaning of every individual word, defines that word, Menon, as unmanageable, as hard to control. You that have kids, do you hear what I'm saying? Unmanageable, hard to control, deficient to proper order. The Complete Word Study Dictionary lists these three definitions: grief, a son, and unmanageable. There is not clear clarity around what that word means, and so it has caused us to have two different interpretations for this verse. But I want you to see, I definitely side, after studying this deeply, I side with one of these interpretations. The first interpretation is this. It's exactly what Kim said. It's the master that takes good care of his servant from a child, bringing him up in love and care and treating him right and treating him respectfully. Over time, we'll discover that servant is like a son to him. There are people that preach that and teach that, where they almost have a father-son bond in time. The example they give is Abraham and Eleazar, where Eleazar was his servant, but he considered, if he didn't have a son, to give his possessions to Eleazar. There's a problem with that view. Look again at verse number 21. He that delicately. Now let me ask you again, what does the word delicately convey? He that delicately brings up his child. It does not mean this. It doesn't mean lovingly and with compassion. It doesn't mean that. It means to pamper and to indulge. That has a negative connotation. Love and compassion is a positive connotation. To pamper and to indulge is a negative connotation. That term in rearing a child does not fit with any other philosophy in the book of Proverbs, where if you're going to have a good child turn out right, you don't pamper and indulge them. What do? You discipline them. See, it's counter to what the book of Proverbs teaches. And it doesn't fit with the immediate context of this chapter. Look at verse number 15. The rod and reproof. Does that sound like pampering and indulging? No, it doesn't. Look at verse 17. Correct thy son. The correct meaning discipline thy son is what it means. You see, this, if we're going to interpret verse 21 correctly, we have to make sure it aligns with all the other teachings in the book of Proverbs, and especially the same chapter. It doesn't fit with the immediate context. It's opposite. Here's the second view. If you haven't guessed, obviously I don't agree with the first view now. I probably would have 2 weeks ago. But I believe that was a wrong view. Here, I believe, is the right view. And I think it fits with the context. It's really saying the master who indulges his servant from a child. by not disciplining him, by not training him to be a good worker, will develop and grow a menon, a son that is a problem, a son that is unmanageable. If you look, set the Word of God aside, and you look at men who study the Hebrew, ancient Hebrew, every one of them will tell you this word is about an unmanageable person. Are we manageable to those that lead us? Brown children, are you manageable to your parents who lead you? Your mom and dad have a smirk on their face. A moral character that is deficient. Here's what it is saying. He will become a son at length or in the end that you, as the parent, will have to take care of because he didn't learn to take care and do for himself. He will be expected, that servant will be expected to be treated different. He's spoiled, in other words. You've always made it easy for him in life, and now he expects it in the end. He will not care about doing servile hard work, Josh. They won't care about that. This servant will think he is special and deserves to be treated differently. And in the end, he will look to supplant anybody that is going to get the inheritance, and he thinks he is the one that should get the inheritance. You will have a son. That is what this verse is saying. I think this verse fits better with the context of the Word of God, better with Proverbs, and better with this chapter. The point about pampering is opposed to disciplining. I'm going to stop here and just say this a minute. Fellas, you need discipline in life. You don't need to be pampered. I need discipline in life. I don't need to be pampered. You need discipline in life. You don't need to be pampered. I've thought a lot about how, after studying this over the last 2 weeks, how I lead people. Am I the type of person that makes an individual think they deserve something that they don't actually deserve? Am I leading them correctly? This person is a servant, an employee, and not a son. If we look at this verse and look at modern life, where we are today, an employee, John, should not receive the privileges that you may give to a son. Has any of you ever worked for a family-owned business where a son was involved? Have you? The son was probably treated a little bit different than you as an employee. And you know what? That's okay. If I had a family-owned business, I would treat my son different than I would the employee. This servant thought he should be treated just like the employee, and I hope this is making sense. Here's another example. The humble prodigal son thought himself unworthy to be treated when he went back as a son. He was content to be a servant. But this pampered slave, he is too good to be called a servant. He expects to be called a son. Do you see the dichotomy in view here? I hope you do. He will take his ease and put himself on par with his master and perhaps pretend to be owed an inheritance. You know, isn't that the world's philosophy today? Think about it from this perspective. Their philosophy, we're all God's children. I will do as I please. I am not a servant, I'm a son. That is the world's philosophy, and I think it applies to this verse. I think masters, bosses, Kim, John, whoever else is a boss in here, I think that we should always do what is right by people that work for us. We should always do what is right. I know when I have tough decisions to make at work, the first thing I think about, what is the right thing to do? Don't put any personalities or people in the decision-making process. What is the right thing to do? Masters should always look to do what is right, regardless of who the individual is. Do what is right and equal and fit. No more or no less. Do right and will never go wrong. Today, we have people in our society that believe they are owed. That they are owed just because they exist. They think they're a son when they're really a servant. They think, I'll work hard unless Uncle Sam is going to give me something. I'll work hard unless there's a pandemic and the government's giving away free money. Oh, and I don't have to go to work. They think they're a son when they're really a servant. Is this ringing true? Do y'all hear exactly what I'm saying? It is a reality that we're facing in society. And pretty soon, when we raise people like that are like this, rather than working hard, what will end up happening is people will believe they have a right to other people's money. They believe it's not right that you have something that I don't have. I think it's one of the reasons why we're seeing a rise with the socialist mentality, that people think they are owed something when in fact they are not. They have their hand out. Again, if you manage people, be the manager. Be the leader. Train them, lead them, guide them, and I believe keep an emotional separation. There is a reason why I don't pal around with people I manage. I've had many of them want to go out to dinner, and I'm just not going to do it. For a business, I will, but not to pal around. There has to be a separation. They have to understand there's a difference between the servant and the son. This world has a hard time in seeing that. Treat them right, treat them fair, but not like a son. And then I find it very interesting that it moves into verse 22 here. And I think they're tied together. Verse 21 and 22. An angry man stirreth up strife, and a furious man aboundeth in transgressions. I think the thought is continued, but it's interesting that the angry man, that's going to need to be a whole shift here, because that's definitely not enough room. But I think it's very interesting that the angry man stirs up strife. I believe it could be the angry man that thinks he wasn't treated right in verse 21. Or it could be the angry man that was spoiled and pampered and indulged. I think they become the angry man when you have to put your foot down and tell them, can't do that, can't do it. I believe it's talking about the same person. But it's also interesting that the guy with the angry spirit, he always produces itself, its like in others. Have you ever been around an angry person? Just angry all the time and mad about something all the time. It produces anger and aggressive emotions in others. The rest of that verse, and I'll come back to the first part of that verse. A furious man aboundeth in transgressions. His furious spirit will carry him to extremes, and he'll do anything to address his anger. And his transgressions grow into multiple transgressions. If you look at angry men, they will be angry in their family. They will be angry in their neighborhood. They will be angry in churches. They will be angry in communities. It's a prevailing rule of their life. They cannot help but be angry. You know, I've been in this church 35 years. We have a wonderful spirit in this church. People get along. There have been times when that ain't the case in 35 years. And I thought about each of the instances I could think of. And I believe every instance is traced back to an angry man. Person that was just mad, and I'm going to get even, and I'm going to do this, and how dare they treat me like that? And mad. An angry man is going to produce an angry attitude. When I was 14 or 15, I can't remember. That's so long ago, I can't remember exactly what age it was, but it was a long time ago. 14 or 15, there was a guy named Billy Whitaker, and that would have been junior high, I guess. Billy Whitaker, I didn't realize it then. I see it now. He was an angry kid. Billy Whitaker fought 3 or 4 times every week with somebody. I mean, fight right in the middle of school. Pop! I've seen him just walk up and pop somebody. I'm thinking, what is that about? He always wanted to fight, not a defensive fight. By the way, guys, it's okay to learn to fight defensively. I think a man should learn to fight defensively. That wasn't what he was doing. He was fighting offensively, aggressively. He was angry and just wanted to fight. As an aside, I'm going to tell you what God did there. At the time, I didn't realize it was God. I look back and see that it was God. This guy that loved to be angry. You could see it on his countenance. It was just, just like that all the time. I'm thinking, man, that's a horrible way to live. But probably, I knew him for about 2 years. I'm not exaggerating to say he was probably in a fight 50 times in 2 years. Kicked out of school often, and then they always let him back in. One day, he just didn't wake up. 15 years old, just didn't wake up. I think God took care of it, and I think God will do that. Angry, because he thinks he deserves something that he didn't have. A furious man will abound in transgressions. He will do things that will get him in trouble, in trouble and not in alignment with God. He becomes very addicted to his anger. It's something that he must have. It's in his life, and it rules his life. Wrath arises in him instantly. I was trying to think, who are some guys that I've heard of that were like that? Al Capone. Al Capone would maybe meet somebody, and the guy he didn't like the guy, and he'd have one of his guys kill him right then. A mean and a wrathful man. Somebody else I thought of, somebody that had a fit of jealousy that immediately hit them. And that fit of jealousy caused them to murder somebody. And his name was O.J. Simpson. You say, well, he was not convicted. Well, you know he did it, I know he did it, and he knows he did it. And it's because of the anger and the transgressions that ruled his life. Look at verse 23. A man's pride shall bring him low, but honor shall uphold the humble in spirit. Do you know a prideful person? Do you know one? Do you like to be around that person? It's pretty despicable, isn't it? When somebody is, my grandmother used to call it, somebody that's full of themselves. It's all about them. Often, those people end up with great embarrassment because of their pride. Do you guys, I'm going to see who knows two people here. Jimmy Swaggart and Jim Baker. Who knows who they are? Probably none of the kids do. I just didn't know what I need to explain here. Jimmy Swaggart was an evangelist. Jim Baker's dead now. He was a televangelist. Really, I think maybe the first big-time televangelist. Would that be right? Everybody. We're talking about a prideful man. Was Jimmy Baker's sin wrong? Yes, absolutely. But Jimmy Swaggart made sure he was going to tell the world about it until it was discovered that he was doing the same thing, doing the very same thing. Pride in a man's life will bring embarrassment. To this day, that was, oh my. Was that 30 years ago? Probably at least 30 years ago. To this day, what I think about and what many think about when they hear Jimmy Swaggart and Jim Baker is that issue in pride. Never, ever goes away. An embarrassment. Let me ask, what are some of the indicators of pride in our life? Pride's a horrible thing. Pride is the thing that Satan committed when he was kicked out of heaven. I think pride was part of what Adam did when he partook of the fruit. Yea, will you be like God? Pride. Pride is something we should shun in our life. None of us. You know, Kim, I heard something about you the other day, and it made me respect you even greater than I already did, and I respected you highly. When we were doing the singles conference, I heard that she went and volunteered. This is a professional lady, leads a big area of a company, volunteered to clean the toilets. Wow. That's the way it should be for every one of us. Putting pride down in our lives. How do we do that? Here are some indicators of pride in our life. Do we assume that we already know it all? And nobody can teach us anything? I've been thinking about this a lot, and one of my heroes used to say that all men are my teachers. And I was thinking about what I have learned from different people. I've learned from my 7-year-old granddaughter, and I want to learn from her. I think about things that she has told me in life. And I'm thinking, did I know that at 7? Do I know that now? And I don't want to say too much about that because I don't want to embarrass her. But number 2, do you see yourself as too good to perform a certain task, Kim Tanner? Do we? If we do, that's an indication of pride. Think about the Browns going to Ghana. Josh is a smart man, a blessed man, and he humbled himself, he and his family, with Emily, to be used in whatever way that God wanted to use him. Not too good for a certain task. Being too proud to ask for help. You know, being independent is a good thing, but every one of us need help in some area or another. At some point and with some subject, every one of us need help from others. Are we too good to ask for help? I'm thankful as I look around. I know many here that I've talked to personally. You're not ashamed or afraid to say you don't know something. That's a wonderful trait. That's a wonderful trait. And I hope that we have more of that type of trait in our life. It's tough for a teacher to say this next point, but do we feel like we need to consistently teach people things? Well, that's a hard thing for a teacher to say, isn't it? Have you ever been in a group where somebody feels like they have to dominate the conversation because they know everything and they want to spill everything that they know, everything they know? That may be an indication of pride in our life. And do we talk a lot about ourselves? A man's pride will bring him low, but honor shall uphold the humble in spirit. I hope that our life is one of humility. I remember a time we were in the other room in the kitchen area, and we were having a gathering for something. I don't remember what it was. And there was a guy that was there. He wasn't a very intelligent guy. Smelled a lot, really smelled. I don't know what mental problems he had, but I can remember being there thinking, I've got to get away from this guy. Pride. Who am I to think that I can't be around somebody like that? Humility is a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful trait that we all should possess in our lives. But honor shall uphold the humble in spirit. It's not talking about somebody that has a facade of humility. Well, people are watching. I better watch out how I handle this situation. It's not what it's saying. It's saying humble here, right in here, where it really matters, that's the essence of who you are. Humble. And it will drive our actions to do right and to interact with people correctly. That should be our desire in life, is to remove pride and to ensure that the heart and the actions are nothing but humble. Let me ask, are they? Are they? It will change how we view the world. It will make us the right servant or employee, as we talked about in verse 21. It will make us not an angry person that we talked about in verse 22. Why do people get angry? Pride and a lack of humility. God expects us to be a humble people, and I pray that we are. We're dismissed.